Games, board games. We might be talking about getting stuff done, but we're not gonna shout. Sometimes life can be stressful, can be fun. But either way, we've got to get stuff done, by which I mean maybe we don't have to do that at all. Maybe we have to admit, maybe we slow down and fall into bed, or we just have a snooze. That's okay. You've got to work out what's right for your individual day. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. 10 a.m. is UK time for Bessie Beats and Boards Game Bladder episode 979. Actually getting stuff done, featuring my friend Ben Downton. Thank you for joining us.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
So you've been a busy bee. You've kind of gotten follow-ups done. You've gotten your game on Board Game Arena. You've gotten lots of people playing it. Your crowd is continuing to go and grow. I mean, and we were going to talk about marketing, and like then we were like, yeah, let's maybe talk about something else. But if you want people to know about you, about who you are, all that other stuff, what would you like them to know about you?
Oh, what do I want people to know about me?
Something.
Well, this is the third time on the show now, and yeah, I really love coming on and having a chat with you. We talk about board games and lots of other things as well that are interesting. So, what about me? I've just come back from a couple of weeks vacation, I suppose, but I was in Israel sort of a few days as a tourist in Tel Aviv, and then we had a acro yoga or partner acrobatics festival for about 4 or 5 days, and then traveled down to Sinai in Egypt for another 5, 6 days.
That's
So
this amazing thing where you're
yeah,
kind of balancing on top of each other, like feet on top of feet, hand, or like hold. It's kind of like, hey, we're balancing in this weird position. And then
yeah.
is it like yoga in that you just hold that pose for as long as you can, sort of? So
I
you're not just getting into the pose and then immediately stopping. You hold it for like a minute or something.
yeah. No, I mean we try and hold it, but often we do something more like a flow where we're sort of transitioning from move to move, and the stuff I'm getting into now is a bit more dynamic, more like sort of circus school kind of stuff. Still a long way from that sort of circus level performance, but yeah, I'd say more sort of moving towards like circus skills and that kind of a
But
level.
definitely something that's quite impressive to look at. I mean, some of those photos are just amazing.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
um, so you've got a bit of a bio running down the bottom if people
Hmm.
want to have a wee read of that. But let's talk about some of your recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So what was the last game you played? What have you been up to in the past few weeks?
Yeah, last game I played was Shot and Totten that I played
Mm,
last night.
that's a
It's
trick-taking game, right?
uh yeah, I suppose it is trick taking. You're sort of playing the cards face up. You've got a row of like 9 spaces, I suppose. It's a Reiner Knizia game. You've got 6 sets of cards from 1 to 9, so it's quite straightforward in that way. And you're trying to, I would almost say like poker hands. So if you
Hmm.
get like 3 of a kind, that beats just matching the colors. If you get 3 of a kind in a run, which is like 4, 5, 6 or 7, 8, 9, that beats just the colors. So you've got this sort of almost poker hand uh, sort of scoring system, and you're trying to win basically the majority of the tiles. So you're trying to win 5 out of the 9. Um,
Okay, I think I
and
was
there's
thinking of a different game, but that does sound
yeah,
quite, typically Knizia, quite mathsy. I assume
yeah.
there's, it's relatively simple to get, so I assume there's many layers of depth below that.
Yeah, exactly. I think the more I play, I mean, I've played it like 3 times now, but it's got exactly what I like in a two-player game, which is it's fairly quick, it's very simple to understand, but there's a bit of depth of play. So, for example, I can you can put down a card that might look like, let's say, you're going for a high one, which will force your opponent to try and challenge you on that space, but actually you're just dumping a card that you know is going to be useless. Or even things like I saw my opponent put down like a blue 4 and a blue 6. So I know the only way he could finish that is with a blue 5. But but I had the blue 5 in my hand, so I'm like, I'm going to hang on to this for the whole game and let him think that he's still, you know, winning that one. So there is a little bit of depth that sort of comes through as you play it, and that's the kind of 2-player game I really like, that is sort of simple to get started, takes sort of 15 to 30 minutes, but has a nice bit of like, I mean, I love that. I've heard it called Yomi. I think we might have talked about it before. That kind of like, I know that you know, but I know that you know that I know, and that level of depth to a game is something I really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that asymmetric knowledge, and then leading to those gleeful moments of, ha ha ha, I'm never
Yeah,
giving you the card that you need. There's something
yeah,
delicious about that. Um,
yeah. Delicious
I
is exactly the right word. Like I was looking at that blue 5, like, ah, I know something you don't know. Yeah, that's nice.
I had a lovely chat with Kirsten Lunde, who's the designer of Questable, which is the award-winning game for the. I say award-winning as if it's like a big Golden Geek or
Yeah.
something, but I gave the award. It was, but you know, there were, I think, there's typically about 15 games submitted each year for the LDEC contest, and the design contest and the arts contest. Both of them, the deadline is 31st of July. And someone messaged me just 2 days ago to say that they'd already submitted a game. And so that
Oh,
was quite
awesome.
exciting. So that's like quite far ahead of the deadline. Good on them.
Yeah.
And but yeah, typically there are 15 games submitted, including some from several published designers. And yeah, Questable from Kirsten Lunde. I don't know if you have mentioned it before. It's a
I haven't
mission-based
heard it.
cooperative word game for 1 to 4 players. And so you work through these 50 missions, and are all so different. I mean, Kirsten's really utilized all the aspects of the deck. Like some of the
Mm.
levels, you need to use a certain number of lower letters. Some of them, you can't duplicate any borders. Some of them, you take out some letters just
Mm.
so you don't have them. So now you need to think, okay, what words can I make, but I can never use E or S? So just
Yeah.
upping the difficulty. And then some of the levels, you've got like a mini deck where you have to use J, K, Q, V, X, and Z in a random order in your words, which is
Nice.
and so there's all these challenges. And we spent about I was having a hard day yesterday. I'm willing to say, I'm not going to get into too much more than that. Honestly, didn't get out, spent most of the day. I did do a bit of writing for rules for DL deck. I'm going to hopefully get that restarted at UK Games Expo. It's going to be called Original, and then there's also going to be called
Nice.
Categorical with the original, with the new typeface, and then we'll have more and more typefaces coming out. But at the end of the day, I had my weekly design meeting with Kirsten Lunde, and we ended up chatting for about a couple of hours, and then we either severely edited or made brand new 16 levels. So there's a lot to playtest over the
Nice.
next week or so. So I'm looking forward to that, and I might be doing some solo testing later on. And
Oh,
that
cool.
is the highlights, definitely, of what happened yesterday. Um, Even though we're not going to talk about marketing, it is still something that you managed to get done, right? And so I would like to talk about that very briefly,
Hmm.
because if you want to just give us a very quick, like 1 minute rundown, like when you're marketing, like how do you decide? I mean, it feels to me like getting stuff done, it's all about prioritization, being like, this is what I need to do, this is what I can sort of leave,
Hmm.
working out what your own energy levels are, what your capabilities are. And so, how do you work out what works for you, what you can dismiss almost?
Mm.
Do you think my assumption is correct, that that is a fair way to get stuff done?
I think so. It's a huge question, and I'd like to say that I've mastered it, and I think it's going to be a lifelong journey to kind of find that balance. Because, like you say, that there's always this balance of, we get a lot of stuff. Let's say, I mean, I'm looking at, say, Board Game Design Lab or Crowdfunding Nerds or something, and someone says, "Oh, you know what? I've had really great success using TikTok, and here's how I've done it." Or, I ran Twitter ads, and this is what I did. And I think, oh, I don't really use TikTok, or I don't really use Twitter, and it's so a big effort from me to learn how to do that and to make the most of it, and probably to not do a brilliant job of it. Certainly not as brilliant a job as the person that's posting about all the success they've had with it. So there's sort of this balance I I would say I struggle with, and I imagine almost everyone struggles with it, which is, okay, should I focus on the things that I find easy and that I'm good at, and that are more likely to lead to success because I'm good at it. So, for example, I'm pretty comfortable on Facebook and spending time on Facebook. So I'm much more likely to interact with groups on Facebook because it's just part of my normal day, let's say, or something I can think of. Oh, I'll post that super quick. Whereas to get onto Twitter, I'd have to create an account, but also like learn sort of what the, I don't know if you'd say protocol, but like culture of Twitter. Some things work,
Yeah, I
some
know what
things
you mean.
don't.
Like, there's a
Um,
different environment and there's different expectations.
mm,
Like, wherever you go, you've got to kind of work out, okay, what am I allowed to say? How frequently should I be posting? What's the quality of my things? I mean, how important is it that these things are well written? I mean, it's kind of
yeah,
how good is good enough. That is
yeah,
also a big
exactly.
question because you can never be perfect, can you? Can we agree on that?
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing I find with marketing, perhaps even more than game design, because I mean I know we're always our own worst critics, so it's also hard to say when a game is good enough. But with marketing, you get much less direct feedback. Like, I mean, I've had enough people tell me that they thought Microdojo was a good game that after a year and a half, I can maybe now admit that, like, yeah, it's a good game. But I never know if, like, oh, that was a good Instagram post. Oh, that was a good, you see like, oh, this one got twice as many likes or whatever, but you never really know, like, oh
Well,
yeah, this
doesn't
is
that surely everyone who liked it is saying, I literally liked
yeah,
this?
yeah,
And
yeah.
um, yeah, I am actually going to counter myself for a moment because I did once see some people and I asked them how they use Twitter because I saw that they've got a ridiculous amount of
Mm,
people that they are following. And I asked them how they use it. And then they said, oh, I just kind of scroll and then I shared a love and they were just kind of double tapping on basically everything.
yeah.
And so for sure, writing a comment does feel more meaningful. It's like, yeah,
Hmm.
people not only took the second to tap on it and like it, but also to actually write something, and that feels way
Yeah.
meaningful. But most people aren't following thousands of people and just tapping on everything that they do
Hmm.
to build up the algorithms. Most people aren't that way inclined, even though there are some of us who are in this, frankly, self-congratulatory, hey, look at me, almost vicious cycle, frankly, that you can all too easily fall into when you're
Yeah.
marketing stuff. But I think there's a good chunk of people that are just, hey, I'm just here to look at the pretty pictures. And if your picture and your text is nice and pleases them, they will like it. So
Yeah.
surely having more likes does suggest that, hey, people have liked your thing. Come on, be
No, you're
confident
right.
in yourself, Ben.
Absolutely right. I suppose maybe why I was discrediting it a little bit was because I was thinking of all the other things that sort of surround that. Like,
Mm-mm.
for that particular post, it's nice, but then actually what you're, I suppose, trying to do with social media is not to get like a like on that particular post. What you're trying to do is get enough likes so that your post is more likely to be promoted so that other people that wouldn't have seen it will see it. And then you're also kind of trying to be consistent enough so that not just you get one post that does very well, because I think it's true that you need lots of impressions for it to sort of stick, and for that actually to lead to someone saying, "Oh, I'm going to play your game or buy your game or talk about your game or whatever." And so you think, okay, that one instance of it is nice, but you sort of go, okay, what do I need to do next? Like, how do I keep that consistent so that by the time it does come to launch or whatever, people go, oh, I recognize this. Oh, I've seen this a lot. Oh, lots of people are talking about it. Because I mean, I notice it for sure on social media. Like, I notice the games that appear in 3 different groups because everyone's talking about it. And it's
Mm-mm.
not to say that I just go and, oh, I'll just buy that without thinking, but it does end up with me. There's probably a lot of games that I never even know exist just because they're not getting talked
Absolutely.
about. Or maybe I have seen them maybe even 2 or 3 times and I've just scrolled past them without thinking. And it's only that fourth, fifth time that I go, oh, what's that? And it's because it's familiar. And so it's already sort of, it's in a background process somewhere, even if I haven't consciously noticed that I've seen it. So yeah, there's a
That's a
lot of other
really good
stuff around.
point. And I mean, as someone who's doing stuff, it can be sometimes feel like, oh, I've already shared this so much, and maybe I'm
Mm,
oversharing this. But like, I shared some of the letter shapes that I did for Categorical, and then I did some work in progress shots, and then people are, oh, this looks good. And then I shared the final stuff, and then that got way less
Mm,
traction because of the algorithm, basically.
yeah.
But then after I posted that and I saw people hadn't posted, I felt slightly guilty. But then when people were looking at the work in progress shots and saying, "Oh, this is great," then I would say something like, "Oh yeah, and I even did a little bit more work to it. Here's a
Mm,
link to the other tweets," and then they're like, "Oh wow, even more amazing," which is great,
yeah.
which people do like it. But you kind of need to. I'm not going to say be willing to potentially annoy people, but yeah, I kind of do mean that.
Mm. No, I think I'd
Because
agree with them.
everything you do has it's a fine line to thread when you're marketing, because obviously you don't want to be literally annoying people and be like, yeah, that's wrong. I'm going to
Mm,
put it out there that there's about 3 people that I'm like, yeah, I'm sick of them. I wouldn't buy one of their games. But
yeah.
that's got nothing to do with the amount of times that I've seen their stuff. That's
Yeah.
because of, frankly, the way they've treated someone else or the way they've treated me as a person.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, you know what, even though I might like this game, I really don't like the way that they interacted with me and belittled me in this. And I'm not going to go into all the stories,
Mhm.
but sometimes most people are lovely, but then sometimes it's like,
Yeah.
but my point is that you don't get, at least I don't get turned off by someone just posting in a bunch of different groups or
Mhm.
saying, hey, by the way, in case you haven't seen it, since you really like this is my new thing. It's like, okay, as long as you are at least spending a couple of seconds to change it.
Yeah.
There is one thing, having said that, like you can't just be going and doing duplicate posts in many different groups at exactly the same time,
Yeah.
because then people who are subscribed to those groups will see, okay, suddenly 7 things from the same person, and that is
Mhm.
it's overwhelming and it feels spammy. But like again, I'm still going to support that person. I just feel like they were misguided. But B, I get that one shot of, hey, this is something that happened, but then it has to be something that's almost regular, like doing it on
Yeah.
different days of the week or in slightly different modes, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I did in the microwatts campaign with the. So I made some funny videos about like things you can do with PVC cards because
Hmm.
the game's gonna be made out of PVC cards, and so I was like, okay, these things are like tough, they're waterproof. Like, what kind of things can we do that you couldn't normally do with board games? And actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I've got a bit of a story around it. But I would share it in one group, and then I would share it in another one maybe a few days later with perhaps a different tagline or something, just so that other people that maybe have missed it have got the chance to see it. Because sometimes there'll be people that are in that group that some people might see it twice, but others might others might see it and just like, oh sorry, not see it, but they'll see it the second time in another group. They haven't missed it. Sorry, they haven't seen it the first time, even though they potentially could have seen it for whatever reason. The feed gave them other stuff, or other stuff pushed it down in the lower down in the feed at the time they were online and things like that. So quite often you'll miss people, even people that would potentially have seen it. But yeah, so I posted about 4 or 5 videos of, I think I had one where I was just dipping it in a glass of water, which, got a lot of reactions because people worry about spilling drinks and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe, it was meant to be a kind of a silly sort of shock
Yeah,
thing. Like,
because
this is
obviously
what
you
you can
can't get
do with
paper
them.
in water, but PVC, it's totally fine. I mean, for
Yeah.
Yogi, I know that during the pandemic, there was one board game cafe that was literally putting them through an industrial cleaner
Oh,
so that they could continue playing it. And
yeah.
also, I just want to say hello, JFO's guards, and lovely to have you and everyone else who's watching, even if you're lurking. But yes,
Mm.
what
But
else
yeah, I
were you
did have
doing
one
in these
comment
videos?
on those videos where I think it was probably about the third or fourth one. Like, I did some things like I was cutting a banana with one of them because they're actually quite tough, and I think I was spreading butter on some toast. And I even built like a little boat out of the tin and used the card as a sail, which worked a bit better than I expected actually. But someone commented saying, "Oh, this just makes me think how bad the game must be that you have to come up with these other uses for the game." And I was like, it's not like you can't play the game. It's just for fun, It's just being silly. But I
Hmm.
thought that was really that was quite a negative comment on it. But that's probably from someone that's seen it 3 or 4 times. Um, so this one person is probably not that interested in buying the game. So let's say I don't want to say I've lost one sale, because I don't think this is one person that was like, oh, I love the game, but I hate these promotional videos you're doing, so I don't want to buy it.
Mm.
You know, they're different things. But just commenting on that post, even negatively, helps other people to see it, because Facebook says, oh, this is a post that's people are interested in interacting with, so you might want to see this too. So even someone kind of I don't know, for whatever reason they decided to shit on the post. I don't know if they missed the point or just wanted to say something negative, but that will have helped other people see it. And there'll be a lot of people that didn't click like or comment that saw the video and thought, oh, it's funny.
And the
So
algorithm
even
is
that
kind of
helps.
unfortunate, because that is the thing that leads to people seeing more things that makes them angry. But
Mm,
I'm not talking about your videos specifically, but generally political stuff,
yeah.
and that's not great. So even as a social media user, if you don't like something, you do have to kind of be mindful, and there are almost always mute buttons. So if you really
Mm,
don't like something that someone's sharing, you can mute them,
yeah.
or you can be like, I mean, I sent a message to a friend of mine saying, hey, listen, I love you as a person, but I've got an unhealthy relationship with food, and
Hmm.
I don't like seeing all your food pictures. I'm unfollowing you for a wee bit just to let you
Hmm.
know. But you're still,
Yeah.
if you ever come down to London, I'm still happy to have you, and I'm still interested in your games. But you know, you have to be the person who curates your own feed, and just
Yeah.
like mute it and don't comment, as hard as it is, you have to be the
Hmm.
person to do that. Sorry.
No, exactly. And actually, there was something I was thinking of earlier when we were talking that I was going to mention, and I think I got sidetracked as usual. Which was, you were talking about, am I spamming people by posting too much? Like, are people going to get annoyed? And I was thinking, so you're right that you don't want to sort of go out of your way to annoy people. But there was something. I'm not really a salesman, but I know it from sort of the sales processes. We call it sort of like qualifying out, and the idea is to try and very quickly as possible get to a point where you realize that someone is not your customer, and you almost, or at least the way I approach it is, I almost want to try and find out, like, give them a reason to not want to be a customer, because that means if they do, they're there for the right reasons, which is, they like the game, they like the brand, or they like being involved, or for whatever reason that they're there. And so I was thinking about this with unsubscribes, because a lot of people say, like, oh, it's, I send an email, and then immediately after you send a monthly email, that's when I get all the unsubscribes. And then nothing happens for a month. And then next month I send a monthly email, a load more unsubscribes. And it can feel a bit, especially when you're starting out, it can feel like, ugh, I need this number of subscribers. I need, I don't know, 1,000 subscribers before I launch. And every time I send an email, I'm losing them. So that must mean that my emails are terrible. But actually, the people that you're losing are the ones that are not interested anyway. So let's say you have 1,000 subscribers, you send an email and you lose 50. If you could order all 1,000 people in a particular list to say this person at the top is like the number one fan, the most engaged, and the one at the bottom is the least engaged, then those bottom chunk are the ones that are going to leave or
Yeah,
unsubscribe.
yeah.
And they're the ones that we're not going to support you. We're not going to back the game,
Even
like,
so, it can
anyway.
sort of sting. I mean, emotionally, I understand that. Do
Mm,
you ever, from a rational point of view, you're 100% correct. And I would rather at this point have, um, I've not been on MailChimp for a few months
mm,
because, since I heard that they were increasing their thing. So I've not sent a
yeah.
mail this year, I don't think. So, I'm probably not sending enough mails because, that's how many months into the year are we? 4 months? And
Yeah, almost 5.
yeah, so I mean, are are we agreed that I'm probably not using my mailing list very well?
Hmm.
And this is the kind of thing where I need to work out, okay, what do I prioritize? Because I'm someone, and we lead back to getting shit done, because I am working on game designs, I'm doing the writing of the rules, I'm doing the art for this. I no longer do my own, graphic design. I send them to
Hmm.
someone who kind of composites the stuff. And I've never done my own actual manufacturing. I send the files to someone else who does the physical cutting out and, putting things into. But
Hmm.
then I do my own shipping, and I'm overdue on some postage stuff that I've got to send. And so there's all this stuff that I've got to do. And then
Hmm.
it's like, oh, by the way, I've got to chase, because I did a thing with Now Play This, and I've got to give them my bank details so that they can send me money.
Hmm.
and I've got to chase up this other thing from actually last year where this person owes me 70 quid for a job that never really got started, but still it's 70 quid, I should be
Yeah.
chasing that up.
Yeah.
And then it's all a case of, okay, what do I prioritize in any given moment? And that for me is the biggest step one task of getting stuff done is what do I focus on getting done? And you've already talked a bit about, hey, maybe focus on your strengths. I'm going to focus on Facebook. I'm going to not bother learning TikTok or Twitter because these other avenues are where I've got my strengths. And it sounds like you're really on top of your email mailing list game. But then
It sounds like that, doesn't it?
I
Don't
mean,
always feel it, but yeah.
you are sending an email basically every month from the sounds
Yeah.
of it. And
First
so,
of the month, every time, first of the month. I think that
that's really
consistency is,
impressive to me, at least,
yeah.
that you've got that sort of regularity.
The
And
date helps. I think there's probably not as many people that are going, oh, it's the first of the month. Where's my monthly email? Like maybe there might be 10 people that are like, oh, can't wait for my monthly email. But for the majority of them, it probably just arrives and they're like, oh, the monthly email's here. It's about 40% that actually open it, which is pretty good, I think.
yeah.
But yeah, that's because it's the first of the month. Now, if I had in mind, oh, I'm going to send an email once a month, and that was it, there'd be some months where it does. I think I've sent an email on the first of the month. I think there was one month I did it on the second, but I've sent it on the first of the month every month for about. God, it's scary to think about now. Probably at least 2 years, maybe a bit more.
Wow.
But I know if I didn't send it on the first of the month, I knew if I had in mind I need to send a monthly email, I would get to the first of the month. For example, this week I've been waiting for some samples to arrive. They should have arrived weeks ago. They probably won't arrive in time for the monthly email. Now, if I was to send it sometime in May, I would probably wait a few days so I had some more content to put into it. But I know that sort of vague, oh, I'll do it this month. It'll be, oh, I don't know what to write this month. Oh, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, God, I've still got to do that thing. And it's harder to remember that, like, oh, did I send the email this month? Oh, I haven't yet. Whereas when it's the
Mhm.
first, I'm like, right, the first is coming up. That needs to get done. And so having a fixed date every month, I think helps a lot. Um, I used to do the Kickstarter updates once a month as well on the first, but I realized people are probably getting spammed with a monthly email that might have similar content and a Kickstarter update that's specific to that project. And now I've only got the one project with microbots that's still sort of going on, but I've shifted that to the 15th. So I'm like, okay, we have one in the middle of the month and one at the start of the month, and that way people are more like, rather than them getting sort of two emails, one from Kickstarter and one from me at the start of the month and then nothing for a whole month, they now get one sort of
Mhm.
in the middle and one at the
No,
start.
that sounds really solid. And um, I've heard from some people that actually, I think it was Frank West who said that after 28 days, Kickstarter has a little button that says, "Hey, would you like to request an
Yeah.
update?" And if people see that button, then it doesn't mean that something's gone wrong with that project,
Mm.
but they might assume something's gone wrong, which is, hey, wait, why am I
Yeah.
not? And so Frank's opinion was you should try to do it more often than once every 28 days, just so that no one ever sees that button. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, I am nowhere near as rigorous as you, but by doing it even once a month, people are going to potentially see that button for 3 days.
Mhm.
I mean, does that worry you at all? Do you
Um,
think like there's a reason to say, hey, maybe I should be working towards a 4 week cycle or something? I don't
mhm.
know.
Possibly. I mean, I did notice. It's interesting that you've told me that because I noticed. So I did a Kickstarter update for Micro Dojo. I don't know. The campaign finished. When did it finish? Like April last year, I think. And I did monthly updates until about February, which was when fulfillment was complete and everything. And I said, the first update once the campaign closes is I'm going to give you an update every month at the start of the month. And every update was called monthly update July, monthly update August. So I think that helps set the tone for what people could expect, which is if you go onto the
Mm.
updates and you see monthly update July, monthly update August, and it's now September, you'd go, oh, there should be a September update now, even if you haven't been following the updates. Whereas if you go on and you're like, oh, I wonder what's happening with the project, and you see the most recent update is monthly update September, and we're currently in September, that's the one you need to read, right? Whereas I join projects late sometimes, and there's like 25 updates, and one's about shipping and another one's about production. I'm like, I don't know where to start with this.
Mm-mm-mm.
But
You
it
want
is
to make
interesting
it
that they show
easy,
the
and so
button.
you kind of repeat the key information that people need to know. So if it's
Yeah.
like, hey, just a reminder, this is where we are, this is the key information, you'll presumably put that all in the bottom of the post in a, hey, here's a quick recap of where we are at this point.
Yeah, and I try and anticipate questions people will have before they have them. Still, I put a bit of a silly post on the tabletop Kickstarter marketing group recently because I think I was at a point where I was getting maybe a little bit tired or a bit frustrated, where I was like, how many different ways have you come up with of replying to a backer's message of saying, thank you, all of this information is here in the update. I've even had comments on an update asking a question that's in that update. So I can't rely on everyone
I mean,
reading.
I saw this morning someone made a Twitter post which was, hey, let's talk about indie game pricing. Source, VG Insights. And then they
Right.
had a picture with, the breakdown of, what price stuff is and then the median pricing. And then a bunch of people said, hey, what's the source for this information?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's literally a tweet, and the tweet, tweets are pretty short, so it's
Yeah.
literally about, I don't know, maybe 10 words.
Yeah. And no, didn't read that far. So I try and anticipate sort of questions people will have in advance, but yeah, I do those monthly updates. But it is interesting you say it shows on that button after 28 days, because like I say, I would post on the first of the month, it would be called monthly update. I said at the start of the updates, this is what you can expect from me. There will be a monthly update, plus a smaller one if needed, but generally a monthly update. And then I would get, I would log on to do the monthly update, and it would be like, hey, 5 backers want an update from you. And
Mm,
I'd see that, and I'll admit I'd got a little bit annoyed, not desperately annoyed, but I was a bit like, come on, like, I post every month, I say there's a monthly update, I've told you what to expect, we're 3 days before the end of the month, so of course an update's going to come, so why do you need to request an update? But that makes perfect sense when you said that the button shows up, because it's probably quite easy if someone's scanning through all their Kickstarter projects and Kickstarter says, do you want an update? It's actually not much effort for me as a backer to be like, yeah, click it. Yeah, I'd want an update. Why not? Yeah, click it. That's all you have
mm.
to do is click the button. So I think that's probably more of a it probably doesn't seem as important as it feels when I get a notification saying, hey, backers want an update. It's actually, if you think about how it's come about, it's Kickstarter going, do you want an update? And someone's gone, yeah, all right. Like that's the level of engagement I think we're talking about here. So it's I don't think it's a
Yeah, I
negative thing,
think you're
even though
right.
it feels
Like,
like
it's
one.
easy to read too much into some interactions.
Yeah,
Like, you know
absolutely.
what? Again, when you were talking about the mailing lists and people unsubscribing, I agree with you from a marketing perspective, selling my stuff. But there have been a couple of emails where it's like, hey, I recognize this email. This is a friend. I thought my friend
Yeah.
was really interested in my stuff. And even if I didn't feel like they were necessarily going to buy anything, it stings a little. Do you ever get that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, sometimes I recognize the names, and I know I said like we should see it as a good thing that people unsubscribe, and um, yeah, I think I'm still a human deep down, so it does
mm,
still it does still hurt. It's more
only
like a
very deep down underneath your hard
yeah.
and robotic shell.
Yeah, underneath the shell of logic. No, I try to sort of remind myself, like when something like that does feel a bit sucky, I sort of remind myself that like actually this is not something that I need to worry about, or this isn't as important as it feels right now. And it doesn't always help, but at least it's there as a reminder that like, okay, this
Mm,
feeling is not necessarily something to dwell on, or basically it's not something to worry about. I shouldn't look at
yeah,
this and go, oh my god, my
100%.
friend's unsubscribed.
I mean, the truth is, like, if I had even a monthly email from all of my friends, it would be way, way, way too much. And
Yeah,
it doesn't mean that I don't have love for you or I'm not interested in what you do, but maybe I'm just not, that devout a fan. Let's be honest. I can't.
yeah,
And, just because I'm not like going to be buying all your stuff, that shouldn't be what's the word, a requirement for friendship or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
And so it's kind of this reminder that, what, we are going through life with everyone. And it's like, with social meetups,
Mm.
how do you prioritize that? You kind of ask
Yeah.
people, hey, do you want to meet up? But hey, on this date, you know what, I'm doing something else, but let's still work out a date. It doesn't mean that I
Hmm.
don't want to meet up with you. It just means that we have a limited amount of time, and
Yeah.
you are but one person in my life. As much as I do value you, you're not the only human that I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And on
Um,
that social side as well, everyone, they have also different values. So, my value of some friends that I have is they don't value me the same way. There are some that value me more than I value them, and there are some that I value more. And so those interactions, like if we go back to like the email list as well, of those people that maybe I want to spend time with, there might be people that are consistently busy, and so I'm not able to get a hold of them, and so the people I would like to spend more time with, I'm not able to, and that kind of sucks. And so actually they become less valuable to me. This sounds really strange to talk about it this way, but in a sense that I stopped trying to sort of make an effort to see them so much, because I think, well, my time's better spent on the people that we do value each other similarly. And I guess it's the same with the email list, which is it's a bit of a one-way interaction. Social media can be a little bit more two-way, but you've got the people that are the ones that are responding to you, or even the ones that are just opening the email, which is, I suppose, as much interaction as you're likely to get. They're the ones that are valuing you in the way that you're valuing them. The ones that aren't opening or aren't clicking or want to unsubscribe, is they actually, in a way, I don't want to say they don't want to be your friend, but in a in an email space, they don't want to be your email friend. So that's
yeah,
kind of
like,
okay.
I mean, I try to ask, well, when I do actually send something, I like to have a little question at the bottom that I'm actually
Mm.
interested in, like a
Yeah.
prompt to reply or something. And sometimes I would get someone saying, "Oh, great!" And like when I was mentioning, "Hey, I'm actually at Spiel," and then a couple of people wrote, "Hey, I'm here as well. If you want to meet up, this is where I
Mm.
am." And then that's obviously super lovely. And I'm like, "Hey, what do you think of this? Do you?" And then there is a potential for an interaction, but as you say, um, it seems really cold and impersonal to talk about
Mm.
valuing humans. But
Yeah.
it is kind of the truth that maybe what are we getting? We're getting some empathy, we're getting some reassurance, we're getting some
Mm.
insights, we're getting some advice. I mean, there's all sorts of, and maybe we're getting just entertainment, energy from
Yeah.
each other, just being around each other. But it has to be symbiotic, ideally. And if it's not, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person, or conversely, that I'm a bad person. It just means that for whatever reason,
Mm.
our, I was going to say agendas, by which I mean like our calendars of
Yeah.
like when we're available or whatever, maybe those never kind of meet up. But let's get back to the thing. And we've
To getting stuff
basically
done. We
had
should get back to getting stuff
a
done.
big ramble, and let's talk about doing stuff, which is itself a brilliant thing. Brilliant thing. It's a little thing which is brilliant. Why is getting stuff done brilliant? I mean, why not just go through life? And I sound like I'm being totally facetious, but I think it's worth answering. Why do we need to plan to do any particular thing? Why not just go through life and be like, yeah, I'll do whatever, and maybe I'll get some stuff done, maybe I won't. Is there anything that like actually has to be done? Why is getting stuff
Mm.
done a brilliant thing?
I can probably only talk about my perspective, but I
Yes,
think it
it's
feels
all
good.
subjective.
Yeah, I mean, it feels good to get stuff done. Like, I think this is a bit of a broader topic, right? But I know, like, if you think about like how you take holidays, when I go somewhere, I want to go somewhere new. I want to do something I've never done before. I want to make the most of like all my time there. And for that to happen, I need to plan ahead. I need to spend time in advance to make sure I can make best use of that time. Um, and so the idea of going somewhere on holiday to do nothing, like I know some people love going on like a beach holiday and lying on the beach and just doing nothing for a week. For me, that wouldn't work, because after about half a day, I'm restless and I want to do something. And even if that's uh, the way I approach things, is maybe this isn't super healthy as well, but like everything is almost like achievements
Mm,
for me. So
mm,
like, even if I don't watch TV a lot, but even when I do, if there's a show I'm watching, I feel like, oh, I've got an hour this evening, I can watch that show, and then I'm like, great, another episode done. Like, I've almost finished it, or read that book I wanted to read, or sort of, I plan ahead. even like with little things like, oh, tonight, yep, I've got free time tonight, I'm going to read that book that I've been wanting to read, and things like that. So for me, kind
And
of getting stuff done feels good.
I do agree with that. And there is definitely a danger of that kind of wanting to complete stuff and everything, that it can
Yeah,
be like, well, I've started this, so I'm going to finish it, even if
yeah,
like the show isn't actually the most amazing thing ever. And
yeah.
I think there is actually, let's get rid of this brilliant, because I do agree that getting stuff done is brilliant, because you enact, bring more stuff into being by
Hmm.
getting stuff done. You can then share it with other people, or it's kind of like, even if we define like what is even getting stuff done, because
Mm.
arguably, like, well, we're getting breathing done all the time, we're getting
Yeah,
defecation and eating done all the time.
yeah.
Um, but yes, it's like, what is getting stuff done? Because if we
Mm.
consider sleeping or defecation, like, getting stuff done is easy.
Yeah. And I suppose getting stuff done. Oh, this is a big question. I think it's, maybe I'll start with a wrong answer, which is it's really easy to fall into the trap of getting stuff done or feeling like you're getting stuff done when you're not. Like things that don't actually, I've heard it called like move the needle, but you can do stuff that isn't actually worthwhile. For example, one thing I could do today, I'm thinking of email list now because it's on my mind. One thing I could do today is I could spend several hours, I could download my email list and I could start having a look at like who's interacting the most. I could look at what countries they're from. I could start putting some data together, and I could probably spend the rest of the day figuring out something kind of cool. Like, I don't know, some percentage of
Mhm.
backers are in the US and some percentage in the UK. So I could spend the whole day doing that, and it might be a bit interesting. I admit I would find that quite interesting, but it wouldn't really be useful. Like, I don't know, what would I do with that information? I'd be able to tell you after several hours work. I'd go, oh, do you know what? Most of my backers are in the US. A good chunk of them are in the UK. Some are in Europe, and the rest are in the rest of the world. So I could spend a lot of time giving you a more accurate answer than that, but it doesn't actually help me. Like, that time spent doesn't actually equate to really much more success, I suppose, or it doesn't really help me design future games. So that would be a sense of where I'd be getting stuff done, but it's not stuff that needs doing.
I mean, I'm thinking about it like, let's people might hate this, but I'm going to take it super literally and pedantically for a moment, because no matter what you do, just by your existence, you are constantly getting stuff done, right? I
Yeah.
mean, let breathing, for example. I mean, every minute that you continue to exist, you will
Hmm.
have, well, obviously there's exact, like, some people can hold their breath for many minutes, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean. I feel like the bit, what we really mean when we talk about it in the everyday vernacular, is I made a plan and then I
Hmm.
got that done. So
Yeah.
getting stuff done, it's like the stuff that we're talking about is kind of something that we plan for.
Hmm.
And it's real, and getting stuff done is making a plan and then sticking to it. That kind of
Hmm.
feels like the key parts of what we're doing. And both of those are actually the challenging parts to me. So
Hmm.
personally, I almost find the making the plan part the harder bit, because you've
Hmm.
talked about putting in your own deadlines, saying this is what I'm going to do. And I've got this theory of game design, like this theory where, okay, you start off, it could be literally anything, and then you shrink down your possibility space until, okay, this is the game that I'm making. And once you know exactly the game you're making, at that point it's been made. Because
Hmm.
at the start, it's like, well, I could make a worker placement or a dexterity game. And then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I've decided I am going to make a real-time action programming dungeon combat game. And then at that point, it's like, okay, what's exactly mechanics going
Hmm.
here? And then eventually it's like, okay, well, now I'm working out exactly what numbers should be on here, what the graphics should be. And once I've decided exactly how the brushstroke should do, well, even at that point, there is a difference between making the decision. I mean, what in design, once you've made a decision, it is done, and you
Hmm.
just need to write it down. But
Hmm.
with illustration, I mean, a lot of those micro decisions come in the actual physical doing of the task, if you know what I mean. Like there's
Yeah.
all sorts of micro decisions that I don't think anyone really thinks, okay, am I going to do this line or am I going to do this line or I'm going to
Hmm.
like all of those are very subtly different.
Yeah.
And so with that initial, what am I going to do? When am I going to do it? That is actually as hard, I would
Hmm.
argue, and I don't know if you would agree with this, as the then doing it.
Yeah, I think so. I find like smaller tasks much easier, which is why I tend to focus on them. So things that I can do quickly, I suppose maybe it leads to that sense of achievement as well. But like if I think of something that needs doing that I can't do right now, I write it down. I use Google Keep to create lists. And I do this not just for game stuff, but I do it as I think of something. Like I was chatting with my mum yesterday, and we were talking about my trip back to the UK next month. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll probably sort out a hire car. Oh, I need to do that. Now on the call at the time, I can't deal with that immediately, so I just wrote a little note in Google Keep, hire car, and now that's on my list. And I think either when I have free time or maybe when I'm a little bit lost, I'll look at that list and go, oh, that's something I need to do. Is this something I can sort out right now? If it is, I'll do it. So like I'm looking at the list now that says hire car. I'll be like, oh, right, I've got half an hour. I will book my car now. And I do it also with games, both with game ideas as they come to me, or just something I think of that, like, oh, you know what, I can share this picture of the post, or oh, I need to chase up the manufacturer, or things like that. So um, I just saw a comment pop up saying, is my plan a calendar or a to-do list? It's kind of both. So if you're willing for another longer story, basically the reason I reached out to you maybe 2-3 weeks ago and said, hey, it's probably about time we had another chat. I've been struggling to get back into design again. I've had
Oh,
one game which I'm pretty confident I'm going to launch next year. Uh, but that idea came about in December, I think, and I've tested it twice since then. And every day goes by, I'm struggling to like just do another test. Basically, I don't know what's putting me off, and like going through that process. Um, and I'd also been struggling a bit with, I would say, the creativity side, not just the creativity of creating games, but also the creativity of, oh, this is a post I can share, or this is a blog post I can write, or this is something I can update people on social media, or this is what can go in the monthly email. I've just, every time I've approached something that needs doing, I've sort of gone a bit like, okay, what am I going to do? And just, drawing a blank. And so I went for a bike ride. There's a nice cycle track out in the desert. And I thought, you know what? It's been ages since I've done that. I'm going to go out for a cycle. And I was listening to some podcasts. And I think every time I stopped for a break on that bike ride, I stopped for about 2 or 3 breaks. The first one I stopped, I messaged you and saying, let's get on the podcast. I messaged Andrew Lowen from Crowdfunding Nerds. And actually, funny enough, I'm speaking with him later today on marketing for small box games. So it's good that we did a different topic. And then I carried on a little bit more. And then I decided on the next one, I messaged Dina, who'd helped out with some of the social media in the past, and she's involved with licensing. And just talking with her for an hour, I find really like invigorating. We come up with all these ideas and it gives me stuff to do. And I'm actually thinking, as I spend more time on games, to sort of schedule regular sessions with Dina, just to keep things moving forward, instead of having this week or month where everything's sort of up in the air. And so in the space of that bike ride, I'd scheduled appointments to speak with you, to speak with Andrew, to speak with Dina. So those have gone into the calendar. And having something like that that's coming up and that I know it's going to happen gives me the motivation to keep going. Because I think if we weren't speaking today, it would be another kind of potentially blank day in the calendar going, well, what needs doing today? And then the answer that comes back is, don't know. So
I think
scheduling
that
stuff
calendar
helps.
stuff makes a lot of sense when there's interaction with other people, whether
Yeah.
someone's waiting on a deliverable from you, or whether you're having a meeting. I mean, every week on Wednesday at 10:30 UK time,
Yeah.
10:30 PM, I mean. Um, Obviously not in the morning, that would clash with the show. But 10:30 PM UK time, which is a reasonable time in New Zealand, where Kirsten Lunda lives, we have a chat and we chat about how we're doing. We chat about what we've play tested. We chat about any thoughts that we've had about Questable. And we might have a couple of tangents, but I would say we talk 70% about Questable. It's a bit
Yeah.
more focused and these conversations, to be honest, especially because I think it is a weekly thing. So then it's like, okay, we have like maybe 15 minutes of, hey, how's your week been? And if
Hmm.
something bad's happened, we will kind of support each other as friends, as humans who care
Yeah.
about each other. But then it'll be like, okay, let's get down to business, so to speak. And there's
Yeah.
something wonderful about that. Similarly, Friday daytime playtesting, that's such a lovely thing. And I mean, I've got to credit myself, obviously, with having started it many years ago, but now David Brain and Ellie Dix are basically the main organizers, and I've been trying to
Mm.
step back because I'm going to leave the country within a year. And so
Yeah.
I want to make sure that it's carrying on when I'm not here, if you know what I mean. And so I know that if I arrive just after 10 a.m., there will be probably Ellie or David Brain already there, and then we'll have a lovely chat until 11, and then we'll be playtesting until like
Yeah.
4:30 p.m. And since like November, we regularly play published games afterwards as a kind of way to bond and then discuss and critique games that no one's got their ego invested into, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And these dates are a lovely thing. So being able to say, okay, this is when I'm going to do this is when I'm going to do that. And
Mm.
there are certain deadlines. I mean, I think April 29th, what's the dates actually?
27th
Shoot,
today.
I need to order furniture in the next couple of days. I think they said that for UK Games Expo, you need to order it all by the 29th.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I need to order furniture, and that's very important. And I'm glad that I know that. And
Yeah.
that really should be on my calendar, even though it isn't.
Mm.
But yeah,
It's
I
interesting you say that actually, because I don't tend to put deadlines on my calendar. I put like appointments, and I will schedule things that I want to happen. For example, I've been putting off doing like the playtest evenings because it's just always on a Monday. So because it's always on a Monday, I'm like, oh, I'll make it. And something comes up, I go see a friend. Like, that's all right, I'll go next Monday. Whereas I need to actually like book in that time. But for deadlines, I think I don't tend to put deadlines in because I'm not sure why I don't put deadlines in. I usually put not a deadline, but almost like the first time something comes available. So, for example, um, paying the taxes, paying VAT has to be done quarterly. Now, if I put the deadline, I might not even notice it in my calendar until we're at the deadline, and then I'm like, oh shit, I need to do this, and there might just be a time where I'm away
oh
or
yeah,
it
the
doesn't get done.
deadline isn't the one to put in. You want to put in
I
the
put in the
one
first
which
day I
gives
can
you enough
possibly do
time
it.
to do it. Like for me, I would probably like put in a reminder, like ideally a couple of days before of that to say, okay, absolutely do this. Because the truth
Yeah.
is, um, yeah, do you think it with stuff that okay, so people talk about like I've heard this stuff like urgency and importancy. So like there's these
Hmm.
two things. So like getting furniture for UK Games Expo is both important and urgent. I
Mm.
should absolutely prioritize that. But on the other hand, drawing a lot of art and writing the bits of text that have to go into the categorical cards
Hmm.
is maybe that's just as important because that's like something I really want to show off. Oh,
Yeah.
well, it's is that slightly more urgent because I need to do that to get Jack to,
Hmm.
put it all together. Whereas it doesn't make any difference whether I do the furniture today or whether I do it tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Really.
And there was something, I think it was on Jasper's blog from Pine Island Games, but something that kind of spoke to me. Like I say, I focus on like a lot of small tasks, and I think I end up neglecting the big one. I don't know, maybe that's normal, but the big one is this kind of nebulous, like, oh, how can I work on? I don't know if have I spoiled the name here. It's Micro Midgard is the one I want to work on
No, you
next.
haven't.
Um, yeah, inspired. I played too much God of War in December, and then the Norse mythology really inspired me, and so I've come up with something that's similar to Micro Dojo, but a bit more complex. But it's a work in progress. But that's a really big, like, nebulous task, and I'm like staring at this, going, "How do I make it good?" Which is a really general question. Whereas something that's on my to-do list, which is, oh, let's say order furniture, that's really easy to get done because when it's done, it's done. Whereas I could spend a day or a week on Micro Midgard or a month, and it might not feel like I've made progress, even though some of that progress is failure. it's hard. It's hard to see the failure as progress, the things that didn't work. But you need to go through. If you're throwing 100 darts at the dartboard and you've got a 1% chance of hitting the bullseye, you need to throw 100 of them. Well, okay, maybe not, but you know what I mean. You need to keep throwing them. And you need to keep
absolutely
missing
know
to
what you
get
mean.
to that
And
success.
like with filling in a form, hopefully the progress is clear and ratcheted, and then you keep making
Exactly.
progress until boom, it's done.
Yeah.
And you're making me feel like, you know what, maybe I should get that out of the way and just be like, okay, this is a temporary order, and I'm going to get this order in just in case, like, I forget tomorrow, or
Yeah.
maybe my internet goes down, maybe my computer breaks.
Yeah.
I don't know what might happen. And so
Yeah.
maybe I should, after this call, like, just be like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, how much furniture did I have? And yeah, but then
Do it
and
now. Get a second monitor. You can do it now while I'm rambling. It'll only take 10 minutes.
I feel bad about
You can
that.
multitask.
So,
um,
um,
yeah, but on this blog, I think what Jasper wrote about, and I'm trying to remember it now, but basically he said there's simple. I think he said there's simple tasks and complex tasks, right? And the simple ones are the ones that have a very clear outcome, which is you need to order furniture. Your task is to order the furniture for UK Games Expo. Once you've done it, you know that it's done. So you said that's an important and an urgent task. You also have an important task, which is to do the artwork. But there's not necessarily a very clear, like, for example, that could become an urgent task because it could be the day before UK Games Expo. You still need to do the artwork so you can present it on some prototype cards. So you do the artwork the day before, and I think the difficulty with that being the complex task, because it's creative, is you might be able to do them the day before and they're amazing and they look perfect and you're like, yep, this is the best I can make
well, I
them.
need to do them
But
in time for them to actually be printed.
okay, so let's say, I don't know. So I would work backwards. Maybe that's actually a good tip. How I work is working backwards from the end result. But that being a complex task is you don't know how long it will take, but you also don't know when it will be done. Like, yes, it might take you half a day or a day to do some of the artwork, for example, if you really push it. But you might get to the end of the day and go, oh, do you know what? I don't like that very much, or I want to do it again, but do it better. Or you might find halfway through you have an idea that you really want to then rework some of the previous artwork. And so, with those being complex tasks, once they become urgent, that's actually a problem because I think it kind of stifles the creativity there. Because, yes, you could get the art done in time by doing it at the last minute, but it might not be very good. It might be amazing, but it might not. Whereas if you do it, let's say 3 weeks before it actually needs to be done, you've given yourself time to go, do you know what? Actually, I'm not very happy with that. And I think that's what's difficult about the complex tasks is you don't really know how long it will take, not because it's not how long it will take you to do the artwork, but because it's like, well, how long will it take before I do it to a point that I'm happy with? Same with kind of game design, right? Like I'm stuck with Micro Midgard is saying like, well, I might have a breakthrough tomorrow and I might go, oh, the game's almost finished now. And then all of that complex tasks become simple tasks, which is, oh, I'm not happy with the balance of this particular power. I'm just going to decrease the cost, test it once. Yep, I'm happy with it. It's done. Simple. Whereas the complex task is, does the overall game work? Is it balanced? Is it fun? And that's why it's harder to do the complex tasks when they become urgent.
I mean, one thing is that for me, I am doing these busy bargain bags where I'm saying, hey, here's something that I'm selling like 70 copies of to see what people think of it, and I'm selling it for a fiver. And if you don't like it, then that's fine. I mean, I
Yeah.
hope you like it, don't get me wrong, but and so for me, it's kind of like I don't want to undervalue my creations here, so I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to give the wrong impression to people who are listening. But there is a large aspect of just getting it done. Like the whole
Yeah.
ethos of the busy bargain bags is that let's not be fretting about perfection and just whatever happens, like this is it done. Like with
Yeah.
the seriously surreal creatures, I not that fond of them, but like I kept posting them and people kept
Mm.
praising me, so like that kept me going, to be honest. And it's like, I don't know whether people are going to like it or not. It's just
Hmm.
got to be something that some people will like, some people won't like, but you see what it is. And
Mm.
I don't know, like I sent 85 creatures to my friend Jack and said, yeah, just get rid of 5 of them and you
Yeah.
tell me which 5 that you've got rid of. So
Hmm.
a task with a big component of uncertainty is usually the hardest for me, says Jay Foolsguard. Yeah, I would agree
Yeah.
with that, because there is a whole thing of how good does it need to be.
Hmm.
And so yesterday, um, for a moment, I thought that I'd finished Categorical because I had all the letters done and I was like, oh my, this is amazing. Now I just get to draw lots of things for a game about words that rhyme with terrible rules online, which
Hmm.
is the name of the game. And the rules are going to be literally on a line
Yeah.
um, on the card. But anyway, bad jokes aside, kind of like, hey, this is now something that I don't have to feel so precious about. This isn't something that people have been waiting for.
Hmm.
And I can just make it and then people can see it and then choose to buy it or not. And this isn't like my one big thing of the year. I don't have
Mm.
to be so precious about it.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward now to doing that art. But then I was like, hey, wait a minute. I've got to still write the text for a couple of cards and like the back of the box,
Hmm.
and um that then, you know, it's the feeling of pressure
Hmm.
to excel. I think
Yeah.
that's the problem. It's like when you feel like you have to excel here, if it's just a case of what my personal, like we asked at the start, and I know we've been talking for just over an hour at this point, so we
Mm.
should probably wrap up. But let's go back to the questions that I wrote down before we
Mm.
started.
Well,
So
can I share a little another quick story
yeah,
before we
go
do it?
for
Because
it.
you reminded me, it's much easier to talk on a podcast and suggest what everyone should be doing than it is to actually do it for a start. Like, but
100%. I mean,
yeah,
this is
but
always a case of do as I say, not as I do. But if you
yeah,
actually
yeah.
work out how to do that, then please let me know.
Yeah, exactly. But this idea of the Bezzy bargain bag, you were saying like, oh, you don't have to be as precious about it. It doesn't need to be perfect, I suppose. It's there is a study, I can't remember who it was, but they asked basically one group of people to make like the best, I think it was pottery or something. They were like, we want you to make one,
Yeah,
let's say vase or whatever. You know the one,
yeah,
right? And then they asked the others, just make as many as you can. We don't care how good they are, just make as many as possible. And they found that the group that were focused on productivity rather than quality ended up producing the higher quality ones anyway, because yeah, maybe they made 50 where the other group only made one, but out of those 50, one or two of them turned out to be really good. So maybe it's harder when you're putting your creations out there, I suppose, for sale or to your fans, right? But yeah, that idea of making a lot of things rather than necessarily good things, and the good ones will come out of it. And funnily enough, we were full loop, we were talking about Shot and Totten as a Reiner Knizia game, and there was this article recently about Reiner Knizia publishing 500 games. Everyone's like, how can you publish 500 games? And I looked on the Board Game Geek list of like how many are in the top 10 or even in the top 100, and out of those 500 games, some of them are ranked number 3500, but he also has some that are ranked number 70. And so yeah,
but
you're
like,
not going to love
let's
all 500,
honestly,
but
being ranked number 3,500
yeah.
is itself an achievement. I mean, let's
Yeah.
not undermine this. I mean, frankly, I would argue that even just getting the 30 ratings that are required to be ranked at
Yeah.
all is itself an achievement.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think producing those 500 games, yes, they're not going to be all 500 are amazing. I'm not
Well,
suggesting that he
your
produces
your
bad games,
point,
but there are some
I
amazing
agree with
hits in
your
there.
point that with the principle of what you're saying, and I have heard that story, and apparently it was actually to do with photography, but people
Oh,
turned it to be about pottery because
oh,
pottery
right.
makes no sense in people's minds.
Yeah.
But because you can more associate the idea of spending lots of time on one pot rather than one
Yeah.
photo. But
I'm
anyway,
imagining a room with 50 pots in it.
but the thing is that sure, not every one of Knizia's games is the most amazing game ever,
Hmm.
but I think they all have goodness in them, and I think
Yeah.
that's the key thing. Like I don't want to say, hey, I'm just launching things because I think, it's like I'm launching things that I am very passionate about and
Mm,
that I care deeply about. It's just that this is my passion and like this is
mm,
my like what I spend all my time doing. And so actually saying, yeah, I released like 10 things last year isn't actually that many because it's like,
mhm.
yeah, of course, there were another 90 or whatever that I started designing that basically no one's seen, if you know what
Yeah,
I mean.
yeah,
And it still goes through a process because I'm still spending basically every day working out rules and doing game design. So
yeah.
I do want to not have someone come here and be like, "Oh, Bezzy bargain bags, they are, they're budget version and they're a bargain." That's the point. Like they are, in
Mm,
my opinion, good things. And yes, a game about auctioning cubes after winning an auction to become the auctioneer, you don't get any cubes there. So I
mm.
am able to price the game more
Yeah.
cheaply, but I think it's a brilliant game, and a lots of people who've played it say that it's in their top two auction games of all time, which is like
Nice.
quite the feat. And
Yeah, it's amazing.
so, like, I'm hoping that people enjoy this, but am I going to ever publish a game with cardboard shits? I don't know if I will. But
Mm,
like, you can hopefully supply your own card to cubes, and like, it's again something that will allow me to pitch it to publishers if
mhm.
like yeah, we'll see.
And I think
Um
it's consistent with your brand. Like I've got, I think 3 or 4 of your games here on the shelf, and it would be strange to have. I've got like, we've got the white cards, we've got the nice sort of personal hand drawings, and all of this stuff, and it would be strange to see those next to a big box game with miniatures and a big dungeon crawler type of game. Do you know what I mean? So like it's also
but
back to
again,
that
that's like
consistency. People know what to expect when they get a busy
you
game.
say, you say that, but like again, I don't want people to say this is what the best game is because I
Hmm.
am wary of being pigeonholed. Like I am
Mm,
working on Seize the Power, which is a game very much about bigotry and discrimination, and it I think, yeah, it is basically just cards of two different sizes and two types of tokens. It doesn't have like
mm,
lots of miniatures. And honestly, lots of miniatures is kind of antithetical to my values because it does use up too many resources, especially if they are
yep,
plastic.
yep.
But I think that I would love to have more stuff with other publishers.
Hmm.
Um, my real t- when I mentioned a real time dungeon combat, bag building, um, pro action programming game, that's a legitimate thing that I'm working on.
Hmm.
And people have enjoyed it. It's kind of been on the back burner for a few months. I need to get it out ready so I can pitch it maybe just before UK Games Expo. Like I might not pitch it at UK Games Expo, but I'm going to
Hmm.
pitch it hopefully to someone just before, like literally the Tuesday before. But anyway, the point is that I do want to work on other sorts of games that you might not
Yeah.
have expected from me. And I have worked on big LARPs. I've worked on experiential games of throwing um, will around. And while you might be
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, of course, it's a bit weird, it's a Bez game. And I do hope to have something that's different of value. But at the same
Mm,
time, I don't want people to say a Bez game must be just cards. That's
hmm.
definitely not what's something that I want people to start thinking. And I
Yeah. I
apologize
don't
for
know that necessarily people would say it must be, but like I've got so I'm a big fan of the Uwe Rosenberg games. I like Caverna and Agricola and things like that. And I recently picked up Bonanza, and I
oh
looked at it,
yeah.
I'm like, this is a Rosenberg game, and it's a great game, but I wouldn't have gone, oh, do you know what? If you like Caverna, you're gonna love Bonanza, right? Or vice
Mhm.
versa. If you play Bonanza, I wouldn't play Bonanza with like friends and family and then go, right, you like Rosenberg? Let's bust out Caverna because they're different games. So I think it's fine as a designer to sort of do different things, especially if you're talented enough to do different kinds of games. But if let's say I'm a fan of Rosenberg games, so he has a brand which is to me is crunchy Euro games, and so I wouldn't look at Bonanza and go, oh well, I like Rosenberg games, so I'm definitely going to like Bonanza. They're different audiences, so when you're a smaller either publisher or designer and you're producing stuff, if you produce something very different, it's not to say people will say, oh, you can't produce that kind of game because you're not that kind of designer, but it's more that like the people, it's twofold. The people that are already your fans might not necessarily like that new game or even have any interest in buying it. So you have to kind of start over with
But of course, I mean,
finding your fans
Bonanza
for the
was
new
the
game.
thing that came before Igritland's Caverna and before, I noticed you didn't mention like the recent Polyomino thing, because it feels like
Feast for
that.
Odin.
Well, I wasn't
Just
going
got
to
that
say
one.
Feast for Odin. I was going to go like the simpler stuff like Cottage and Patchwork.
Yeah.
Because it feels like there's kind of three branches to what Rosenberg does, which is, the polyomino stuff, the worker placement stuff, which sure, in Feast for Odin they do combine, but by polyomino stuff I meant the slightly simpler.
Yeah.
And then, Bonanza, like there's Werfel Bonanza, there's so many Bonanza games out there, like, but it's a good game. And the interesting thing is that for Rosenberg, Bonanza was the first one, and then Agricola kind of became like, I think at this point, maybe for a lot of more hobbyist gamers, that's the thing that they know better. But Bonanza has still probably sold way more.
No, that's true. And so my view of what a Rosenberg game was challenged when I saw Bonanza. And actually, I'd forgotten about Patchwork and I've never played Cottage because I guess those are games that don't appeal to me. So it's not to say that if I didn't like, let's say, Cottage, that I'd say, oh, I don't really like Rosenberg games anymore. Or like, oh, this one sucks. I would just go, oh, the other types of games he produces are games that I'm more interested in. And so if I was, let's say from my point of view as a publisher, if I was to publish a different kind of game, for example, I've been working on a few different games recently that are not necessarily micro games, but not like Euro-y games, that they don't fit with the brand. So that means anyone who's already a fan of my games might not like this new game, but also if this new game does really well and everyone goes, oh, I really like that, I'll check out Micro Dojo or I'll check out Microbots or 99 Ninja. They'd go, oh, well, I like this other game that he did, but I don't really like any of the others. And so it just means you end up splitting the focus. And okay, if you're a really big designer, really big publisher, like, AEG can do that. They can produce lots of different games for lots of different audiences. Whereas I'm still cultivating maybe one audience at the moment. And so to do something different is difficult. It's like starting again, basically.
Yeah, I do get what you mean. Like, it is like you lose some of that advantage that you have of your pre-existing audience. And I definitely agree that, look, if people are probably going to have more faith in me, even though, like, I was the developer for Chocolate Factory, which is like a fairly meaty game, and I'm not going to overstate my involvements. Like Matthew Dunstan and Brett Gilbert had already done a great work, but I hope that they would both agree that if I hadn't been involved, then it would have been a worse game because the things would have been not as well balanced. And, I got rid of some, basically there was one strategy that was problematic in the game that I'm like, I like to believe that I'm skilled at analysis and looking at things, noticing, what's the word? I'm like, not, there's a better word, but like seeing a strategy that has massive problems that's going to ruin the game for everyone or make it uninteresting or feel like, okay, you just...
Degenerate, I would call them.
Degenerate.
Degenerate strategies.
That's the word I was looking for. So at trying to find those that other people might miss. And as a designer, you don't have to find those things. Like, hopefully there will be someone on the publisher's side who is helping you with this and having these final sets of eyes. And like people, for sure, I understand that people might know me mainly through Yogi and a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after some mixed noises, and might be like, okay, Bez has made those two games and a bunch of other stuff. We're not sure what Bez has really made, but yeah, we'll trust Bez to make something silly and family friendly. And I get that. I appreciate that. That is a skill that people believe that have. But like, go to Vlada Shavatel, who Bunny Moose Moose and
Oh yeah.
like dungeon lords and code names. I mean, there's all sorts of things going from like one of the heaviest games ever to one of the simplest. And well, one of the simplest is very much overstating it, but going from like a 2 out of 10 complexity up to like a 9 out of 10, I would say, almost. And there is definitely a genius at work, and I don't want to say that I have the same skills as a Vattel because that would be. But I do think that all of us, as we spend time working on games, we get better at not only making those specific games that we worked on, but also other games in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a whole extra topic that
We always come up with like 2 or 3 extra topics for the next show when we talk.
Thoughts and me ranting. Let's crack on with the initial questions because I would like to get this done in a somewhat timely manner. So some barriers in our way, I think feelings of perfectionism. What are some of the other barriers that we have in our way?
Ooh.
Is there a fear of changing expectations? Like when you say what you've said about hey, if I made this, then people might be disappointed with it, or people might be disappointed with my previous thing. Would you say that that's a barrier?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things that have kind of come up for me recently as well. I think one is I don't know if I want to talk about it about perfectionism. I don't know, maybe if it's intimidation, but like Microdojo did quite well. I think it was a good game, and so now the next one needs to be as good or better, I suppose. Whereas when I started, my view was I'm going to try and make this game. I remember spending the first prototype I made took me like 10 hours where I'm just like, I'm going to make a game. I think I thought about it for about a week and I was like, okay, let's sit down and actually do it. And after that day, I was like, well, I don't know if this is any good or not, but let's see. Let's start from here. And then even after sort of or up to launch, I was still thinking like, okay, well, I don't know how well this is going to do, but let's just kind of see what happens. Whereas I think once you've been involved in games for a longer time and you've had some success with games, and so there's maybe that pressure to either produce the next one that's as good or better than the previous one, and so that adds a lot of pressure of it being good enough, I suppose. Whereas when you start, you don't have any framework, you don't have any reference, so it's like, well, let's just do it and see what happens. So that's one of the barriers I found is I think I've made in the last few months come up with concepts for about 6 or 7 different games, and maybe even started to make a prototype. I sat down and made a quick like spacey roll and write recently. Hasn't even been tested. There's no excuse for it because I haven't even play tested it, and I've got 2 dice here ready to play test it, but I haven't. And the only thing that's stopping me is looking at it and going, I don't think this is very good. Whereas when I started, there was no sense of what was good or not, and there was no sort of preceding game to judge against. So that's definitely a barrier that I've had recently.
Yeah,
Let's play test it.
Now live. I'm not sure if I can get on board with this because we are trying to wrap up, but I do agree with what Sates is saying here, and so I think that there's this sense that things need to be great, and what can you do to overcome that? I mean, me framing things as a busy bargain bag does help to overcome that. Me saying, well, this is a $5, so what do you expect for a $5? I mean, people are hopefully, the people who got the first ever print run of a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after some mixed noises, it's like 95% the same as what people later on now are paying like 15 quid for, which still boggles my mind that people are paying like that for like, because it costs a bit for the shipping, and sometimes they just buy one copy and it's like they're still buying it to go like I don't, but I would recommend they buy Cute Comical Creatures. I think that's a slightly better game, but presumably people see it and are like, hey, I'm going to buy this. And having that test run is a way for me to be. It doesn't need to be perfect. When I first did it, when it was 50 copies, it was like, that's it. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's fine. If it sells out, then I'll do another version. And it did, and I did. And similarly, if we say going to playtest, like, who are you disappointing? Are you disappointing yourself? Are you disappointing the people that you playtest with? And I think it's important to moments while I jiggle and
Stretching
wriggle and
time.
take up of the chair. And
I've got we've changed since the last show. I don't know if anyone will have noticed the background is different, but I've moved. I've got a standing desk now, so I've been standing up here the whole time.
well done.
So yeah, hopefully this will make some kind of difference.
But like, look, when you're playtesting, if you're playtesting yourself and if you're afraid to do that, that sounds like you're just afraid of disappointing yourself. Get over yourself, Ben. I mean,
good advice.
I feel like you are capable of terrible things, and that's not to be shied away from and run away from. This is to be embraced and be like, yeah, we can make terrible things. We can make wonderfully terrible things. And sometimes they will just be terrible in a boring way. And it's like, yeah, but then you play it and then you learn from it. And as you said, right in the middle of this talk, every failure you learn from. Like when you throw the darts and it's like, hey, it's not like even as simple as a dartboard. I mean, that's kind of oversimplifying it. But yeah, if you throw a dart and then it were to do a Catherine wheel and then go flying out the window and hit someone's head, be like, oh wow, that was amazing. Well, what did I do with my magical dart flying fingers that made it do all these crazy tricks? And then you'd kind of learn each time, oh, when I just let go of, it's kind of more like a toddler learning to throw darts, which sounds very dangerous. So please don't give toddlers pointy lethal weapons. But it's kind of like that because there's like, oh, I let go and it just falls down. Well, I better not do that again. Oh, I did that, and we have these really boring failures that we need to do over and over so we can learn why they were failures and why they are bad, so we can improve our next things and then our next things and so forth. Does that help at all?
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I know every time we do a playtest, there's always like I get a page of notes of like ideas and even if they're not necessarily other playtesters' ideas, it can be like, oh, I've just seen something and had that idea. Honestly, I couldn't tell you what the barrier is that's stopping me sort of getting them playtested. I think it's just maybe it's that intimidation. I think also what it is getting it to the next playtest. Like I don't have all the answers yet, so I know there's some things in the game that I don't want to say even don't fully understand is the best way to put it. So it's not like, oh, I don't know why it's not working. I don't have a clear picture in my mind of like, this is how let's say the economics in the game work. Like this is the sort of, these are your paths to victory. I've started sketching some like flow charts and notes and things, but I still don't have this clear idea of like, this is how much this is worth. This is where it should go.
You know what can help with that sometimes is having a backup game. Like Ellie Dix, came over a couple of weeks ago with a brand new Euro game and said, hey, this is a game, and I've tested it by myself a couple of times, but I'm still not sure about it, but I've got some backup things. And people know Ellie, and she says this is basically a crash and burn. This is the first time it's ever been playtested with other humans, so there will almost certainly be major problems. And true enough, our sessions are about 90 minutes long, and half an hour later, I look over and they're basically packing it up because it's gone disastrously. And then Ellie brings out another game that is a little bit further along. And so by having this one thing to be like, hey, I don't know, maybe this will crash and burn after 10 minutes. I have no idea. But if it does, then we'll still get to play something. And having people who are cognizant of that and willing to accept that and presenting it as something that is possibly terrible. And Jay says, yeah, designing several games helps for me too.
Yeah. Then we get back to our original topic of, how do we get stuff done and how are we getting the stuff done that matters?
Yeah. But this is the thing. I mean, this is why are you not the stuff done is like playtesting, and it
Mm,
sounds like the fear of failure is a massive thing for you. And frankly, it's kind of is a massive thing for me in the case
mm,
of, yeah, enjoy your work. And but for me, categoric hell is a high pressure environment
mm,
because it's overdue. People have already paid for it. Whereas if
yep,
I'd gone, I think it's probably going to be the last Kickstarter, and I'm not sad that I've done things in the way because like there's been many benefits. If I'd
mm,
waited until I'd had all the arts done for In a Bind, now known as Yogi, it might never have come out, and I might
mm,
never be a full-time board game designer. But at this point in my, I'm going to call it career, even though I feel the need to use quotation marks, but I'm going to stop myself from doing that. I'm going to have some more faith in myself. At this point in my career, if I'm self-publishing something, I am going to do all the arts up front. I'm kind of just going
yep,
to assume, yeah, it's going to sell some number. It might sell a smaller number than I would ideally like, but especially with the power of print on demand, I can
mhm,
get that. That's what print on demand has allowed me to do, to bring down the barrier to entry, to say, you know what, even if 50 people like this, yeah, I'll be a bit disappointed, but I will send it to them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's, yeah, the way it is for me. And yeah, like as long as 200, if 300 people back a Kickstarter, then I'll be like, yeah, that feels like a success for me.
mhm,
I've done well here. And I feel like having the art done up front and having as much done up front
mhm,
then allows me to say, this is what you're getting. And this is now I'm giving you full knowledge of everything. And
yep,
therefore, by giving you the understanding of what to expect, that removes my own stress
yeah,
and fear of failure later on. That's something that's
definitely.
going to
I
help
also
for me.
think when I mean, I've tended to do that approach as well, where the game is basically done by the time it launches, and so all that's needed is, maybe a few tweaks and polishes, or suggestions from backers, but mostly it's ready to go to print. And I actually don't think I'd enjoy, these big projects where they're like, we've done chapter one, we've now got 200 art images to go. If the project funds, we're going to
Mm,
use the money to fund that, and so on. Because when you're creating something, I think ready for launch, you're creating the game to the point where you're happy with it. Whereas I think if you've just got, let's say, part of the game, and you say, okay, now, okay, it has funded, I'm going to have to produce this. It's gone from being something that you're kind of self-motivated to do to get done, to a job that needs doing, which is, it's become a chore basically. Even if it's, even if you enjoy drawing, it's still a chore, because you're like, I need to get this done because people are relying on me. And I think when it becomes a chore rather than something that you're like, oh, I'm going to create this game and I'm enjoying creating it and enjoying the process, it becomes about the result. And that's when it's harder to get done, because the deadline's looming, but it's really
mm,
hard to motivate yourself to do it, because it's something you have to do, not something you want to do. Even if it originally started as something you want to do, if you have it unfinished by the time the Kickstarter funded, it now becomes something you have to do for backers, even if it
mm.
started as something you want to
Yeah, I mean, like we could talk about this topic, I
do.
think, for like another 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
One thing is like, when do we just need to slow down? Because this is a genuine question. Like, when should, like, if you're saying I'm doing this project and this project and this project, at what
Mm,
point do you say, you know what, this is actually just too much? I
mm,
just want to take care of myself, my body, and actually engage with the world and engage with my non-gaming hobbies like acro yoga
mm,
or just or pole dancing or getting out and doing more things like that.
mhm,
How do you strike that balance? Because we want to, um, capitalism kind of says be more efficient,
mm,
but we are not robots and we have to take time to care for ourselves.
mm. I'm still learning how to do that. I mean, I do take care. I do the things I enjoy. Like, I make time to see friends and to go to the gym and things. But it's definitely, like with the game design, when it is this nebulous thing, I feel like, oh, I need to get stuff done, but I don't know what that thing is. And so I'm not really getting stuff done
Mm,
because I don't know what the thing I need to do is. But I'm also not enjoying the downtime, because I have this nagging sense in the back of my mind, like, oh, I've got free time. I should be making progress on something.
mhm,
So I think scheduling, I don't tend to schedule my design time. I know some people do. They schedule like, right, between 9 and 11, I'm going to sit down and do this. maybe that would work for me, but I haven't been consistent enough. But scheduling time for other things I think really helps. So like I schedule when to go to the gym. For sure, like scheduling appointments like this, like when we're going to have a chat, that's a fixed thing. Someone's relying on me, so it absolutely gets done. If I have oh, you know what, I'm going to go to the gym at some point per day today. It almost never happens because I'm like, oh, I'll go later. Oh, you know what, I'm kind of hungry. I don't want to go to the gym hungry. I'll eat something. Oh, actually, I'll wait for the food to go down. Oh, now I'm tired. Oh, maybe I'll go tomorrow. So, but if I schedule it in like for a session with a personal trainer, I'm like, he's going to be there at 12. I'm meeting him at 12. I will be there at 12. So scheduling those things with other people really helps me. And even if it's down to like scheduling time with friends, like I will message a friend and be like, hey, let's meet on Wednesday. And then I'll put it in my calendar. I'm meeting this person on Wednesday. And so then it gets done. Even if it's enjoyable social activities, I still kind of put it in as a reminder, like, hey, I'm doing this
for
Wednesday.
sure. I mean, if I'm meeting with a friend, that's always got to go in the calendar. Otherwise,
Yeah.
how would I remember?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Um,
sure, I might remember, but then that's taking more brain space, and that's something that I've always got to be thinking about.
yeah.
Do you have any? Feel free to give some quick, glib answers. Can we really always do the thing?
No, but we need to be able to let go of the thing, or decide when the thing is not worth doing, basically, and be okay with that.
Nice. Can we always get more done?
Yes.
We
We can always do more. That's the problem. Is that it could always be better. We could always spend more time. We could always work harder. And so, although actually, sorry, there is something that I've quite liked as a philosophy, which is, like say someone's done an exam or something and it hasn't gone very well. They're like, oh, I could have done better. And I like this viewpoint that like you couldn't have done better because you did exactly as well as you could have done. It's just when we say I could have done better, say at the exam, you mean I could have done better based on my knowledge, but
right now.
actually you maybe couldn't have done better based on your stress at the time or the sleep you got the night before. So like we think, oh, I could have done better, as in like the potential was there, but actually you did exactly as well as you could have on the day, because I think if you could have done better, you would have. It's just we don't factor in all those other things, like maybe I didn't sleep well, maybe I was stressed, or maybe other things came up that meant I wasn't as prepared as I could have been. And so yeah, I do sort of like this view actually of you did exactly as well as you could have.
Yeah, I
So
like
I've given
that.
two
It
answers that
feels
conflict.
very zen. Now,
Yeah.
I've asked you lots of questions, and I'd like you to ask me and anyone watching the question of the day. Question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. Question of the day.
Oh, you know what? I should have known this was coming, and I never have a question.
Maybe a silly question.
Are you looking forward to UK Games Expo?
Am I looking forward to UK Games Expo? Yes, absolutely. To everyone else
Yeah.
out there, are you going to UK Games Expo? Are you looking forward to it? What's the thing that you're most looking forward to? The thing that I am most looking forward to is just that moment when everyone's kind of working on my stand and I'm able to just sit back and it's running. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the time when it's like, okay, this is done and people are enjoying the stuff and people are enjoying the new things. That's what I'm. J Fool says, not this year. I assume that's what you meant.
Oh, that's
And
a
Mike
shame.
says, I am very much looking forward to UK Games Expo. Lovely, I'm looking forward to having you. And Mike, for those who don't know, is going to be on my stand, dressed in red and teaching my games.
Awesome.
And so at this point, I'm going to, what's the thing that you're looking most forward to at UK Games Expo? You have to answer your own question, Ben.
Oh, I do. Do you know what? It was such a rush last year. Like it was exhausting, but I had so much fun. Like meeting people, talking to people. The stand's going to be twice as big this year. So we have two tables instead of one, so it's going to be twice as much work. So I don't know if I'll have even less time to get away, but it was really enjoyable. Like talking to people. Yeah, I think just don't know how to describe it. It was just such a high having all these people around and talking all day. Really enjoyed it.
100%. I'm good. You know what? I am actually really the thing I'm most looking forward to is hope. I'm really hoping that people dig the categorical deck. That's the thing. The thing that I'm most looking forward to sharing. Over to you. What are you up to? You can share bots if you want to. I had an agreement with Kirsten Lunda that this morning I would go for a run. I didn't do it, but I did have a timer at 11:30 4 minutes ago to remind myself to go outside. So I am going to, after this,
Order your furniture first, then go for a run.
no, I'm going to go for a run. Because
Okay.
if I order the furniture, then I've got to kind of do the work of finding out what I had last year. Because I can't remember how many tables I had. It's not like you, hey, one. It's easy to
Yeah.
count to one.
And this year it's 2.
I mean, I have to, remind myself how many tables and how many chairs. It's a lot to count. I mean, I need to look up my, yeah, I don't know how I'll find out, but there should be something where I can find out.
There should be an invoice from UK Games Expo, which will list what you ordered from last year. So I think if you search for UK Games Expo and invoice in your email,
Oh,
it'll have a list
invoice.
of
That's a
everything you
good thing
ordered.
to search for. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I am going to have a quick run. I'm going to order furniture. I'm going to do a lot of drawing and colouring in. And that is me.
Nice.
And also finish off the writing for categorical first. And hello, Joanne. It is lovely to see you over from America. And do I have photos from last year? Yeah, but I don't think that I could tell from the photos. They're all from different angles. But yeah, it's lovely to see you, Joanne. I hope that you're doing well. We are just about to recap and wrap up. But what are you up to today? Is there something that you want to do, something that you need to do? Please share. I promise that I care. And while people type that up, today we have talked about let me get the correct banners. And I'm actually going to delete this so I don't click it again. We talked about acro yoga and Schotten. We talked about the idea of Yomi and me working on Questable with Kirsten Lunda. We talked about learning TikTok and Twitter and maybe focus on your strengths. We talked about marketing, getting less feedback because people don't normally say, hey, Ben, that was a good marketing campaign. I appreciated it because that's not what people are primarily engaging in. People are engaging in your game. And we talked about the idea of repetition, of saying things and making sure that when you put an update, you kind of give them the, hey, what's happened so far? We talked about the funny videos of cutting up a banana and putting it in water and sailing a boat with PVC cards, giving people a reason to say no. And I say this all the time about demoing at a convention. I ask people, do you like word games? I want them to say no. I want them to say, you know what, the only games that I enjoy are multi-hour epic games where I do heavy strategy. And then I say, you know what, well, I hope you enjoy the rest of UK Games Expo. And, smile on our face. We've saved each other a bit of time. And we talk about having clear deadlines, talking about how once you say, I'm going to do this at this point, schedule it, it hopefully gets done, whether it's the 1st of the month or the 15th of the month or whatever. Anticipate questions. Think about what people might ask you when you're sending out a mail list. And we talked about unsubscribes because we are human. And even though rationally it might actually be good, it does still sting a little because below our cold robotic exterior, we are human. And we talked about working out what's worthwhile and getting stuff done. Half of that challenge is in the making of the plan, in the working out what needs to get done. And it's really what gets done and how to do it. I mean, sure, if I say I'm going to carry all of these things up the stairs, then doing the thing is the main issue. It's the tiredness and all that. But for sure, it's the planning around it that helps you set yourself up for success. Oh dear. We talked about deciding to do something and doing it. We talked about making lists. We talked about busy bargain bags, helping me not to be precious. We talked about perfectionism. We talked about predicting perceptions and having this pressure from outside, the fear of disappointment, having backup games so you can playtest your things and just get your blasted thing playtested, Ben. I'm telling you. And we talked about giving yourself time. We talked about making lots of pots or photos or whatever it was. We talked about scheduling design time maybe being something. We talked about learning when to let go. And we talked about how maybe, even though you say, I didn't do as well as you could have, maybe you did exactly as well as you could have, given all the things that you don't really account for when you make those kinds of statements. And it's been a lovely chat. And thank you very much, Ben. Please share, spread the word.
Always amazed by the recap.
Ben and everyone else. And Joanne says, I am going to a garden with my husband over the weekend. They are famous around here and they have beautiful tulips and more. That sounds lovely.
Nice.
and I playtested some indie games. One went on YouTube, and the developer was super grateful for my comments. Wonderful. Well, I'm sure they would be. Thank you very much. And yeah, enjoy your gardening walk. So at this point, if you want to check me out, I am, of course, Stuff by Bez in all of the places. I am going to totally wrap this up. I'm doing no more daily streaming after episode 1000, which will be an epic thing. But in the meantime, in the next week, um, tomorrow will be a quick show. Saturday is a playthrough of a game with Josie Finch as we chat. Sunday is a quick blast from Dicini. 1st of May with Phil Walker Harding. Tuesday, 2nd, a recap of Dicini. Alan Paul and I will discuss mechanics next Wednesday, and Thursday having Kirsten Lund on here. And, I've got a full schedule of guests basically every day thereafter until episode 1000, where I've got like 22 guests all lined up, which is going to be a new person every 20 minutes, which should be quite exciting. And we'll have to talk a bit faster than we have been doing today. I'm telling everyone that it is basically micro talks. But if you want to check out Ben, where do you like to be found?
I'm usually on Facebook personally, and then for the Prometheus Game Labs, there's prometheusgamelabs.com. It's the website. There's an Instagram, which is prometheus.gamelabs. There might be something else I'm forgetting, but yeah, they're the main areas I'm on.
And once more, thank you very much, everyone. I don't think there's anything left to say at this point, except for, as always, lots of love and bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Blue, blue, bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Blue, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye, everyone.
Bye.